Okay, we're going to talk about goals, but before I dive into that topic, I want to talk about something that can happen when you set a goal or you're striving for something, or maybe you were in the zone at some point or you knew what your calling was. There's a tendency sometimes for us, especially if we're in a second chapter or third chapter of our life where we're progressing into a new season, is that we can look back on a season and think, what went wrong? How come I can't go back to that season? Gosh, I remember when, I wish, and all these different things. First of all, hindsight's 2020, and a lot of times we look back and it's not as great as we think it was. But I do believe that there's sometimes a turning point where we feel like we lost our mojo. We lost it. And I do remember that time for me. And before I tell that story, let me tell you what I think happened is in the book, The Call to Lead, John Orberg talks about the shadow mission. Now, we all have gifts and talents that point us to a calling or a purpose in our life. But this shadow mission can really derail us and get us going in a different direction, even in the slightest little 5-degree turn. This is when we don't embrace our true mission and we default to patterns of thoughts and actions based on temptations and our own selfishness that lead us to portray our deepest value, not portray, to walk away from our deepest values. And the results is regret and guilt. That's a little bit of an excerpt from the book. And he's basically saying that if we don't embrace our true identity, and maybe it makes us scared or nervous, or we do it for a little bit and then we're like, we feel like an imposter. And so we kind of pull back or whatever. What we default to are patterns, thoughts, and actions that are based on our temptations of our own selfishness. And it leads us to deny or forget our deepest values. And I'm saying I'm kind of repeating that because I want you to kind of hear that. A shadow mission is when you start to do things that are more comfortable or more focused on yourself than it is about what you're giving and doing for the greater whole, for a purpose, to make a difference and an impact. We start to serve ourselves. And it may even be through fear. It may even be through discomfort or anxiety, where we start to either self-medicate or we start to do things that are distractions, that we just kind of start to coast. And I remember when I was in a season where I really, truly got clear on what my purpose was. I got really committed to following my faith, and that's Christ. I followed Christ's character, really abiding and just humbled and just really wanting to be used in the way that I was created. And so it was great. And I saw great success and a lot of influence and a large following, which then made me detour about 5 degrees into looking at myself, going, oh my gosh, can I maintain this? Do people, like, I need the approval. And I started looking for the approval, and I started wanting the notoriety to make me feel better. And it made me actually ultimately lose my confidence. And so then the focus constantly was on approval. And I did make an impact. I still cared about people, but there was still this self-comfort that I would try to find a way to serve myself, especially in moments of stress. So I was wavering back and forth from a shadow mission to the real mission. And then I would get recommitted, and then I would fall back because of the insecurities. And so this is where and when we fall back, sometimes it's in pride, and we end up being like very neglectful of people, and it's all about your fame and your win and your fortune. Or it can be an imposter syndrome, feeling the pressure, pulling back and saying, I don't want to do it. I just want to sit and binge watch TV and indulge myself in wine or shopping or whatever, scrolling. And that's what I wanted to talk about in maybe the past, in setting goals and not hitting them, or saying you're going to do something and not following through, or knowing what your purpose is, but you question, you go, but really, is it? Who am I to do that? Or you feel like you don't have a purpose because you've never even allowed yourself to go there. And so I don't want you to set a goal that doesn't have anything to do with your purpose. I don't want you to set a goal that's only self-fulfilling. What could be a goal that you set that you know is aligned with the things that light you up? I'm going to give you some things to think about. Okay, so here's the other thing I want you to think about is that it is more about your character than it is about your giftings. It was really interesting because I posted something on social media that said, I just talked about how making a transition and setting onto the course of your calling or a new chapter in your life, a shift is not a checklist. You can't just go through and check things off and go, okay, what do I need to do? Okay, great. Boom, 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 done. Here I go. That's not how it happens. It's really truly through looking at yourself and adjusting and saying, okay, what are some character traits that I have that aren't serving me well? How am I going to go into this new season in a new way? How am I going to transition and do something more powerful than I've ever done before? There's some changes that are going to have to make that we're going to have to make. And it's not all about giftings. You can refine your strengths. You can take classes and courses and you can learn how to market and you can learn how to speak better, or you can learn how to teach better, or you can learn how to garden better, or whatever your thing is. And you can learn and improve your giftings and strengthen your strengths. But if the character traits aren't there, there's going to be a problem. And so I loved this quote. So what was so crazy is that I picked up this book and I read this part that I had not realized I had underlined. I'm trying to find it here. And it says that, here it is. We are all born with gifts and talents, but they're not the most important thing about you. It's your character, which is your moral and spiritual makeup. It's your habitual tendencies, the way you think and feel and choose, your intentions and motives. This is what makes you trustworthy or dependable, humble or arrogant. Trustworthy or undependable, humble or arrogant. It's who we are at the absolute core of our personhood. So your giftings are not who you are. And it's not the most important thing about your journey. It's your character. And what those of you who are Christians, when it says that I want to, we're called to imitate Jesus. We're not called to have his giftings, imitate him in his giftings. We're to imitate and strive for his character. So that's why when I had said, when we first started this goal setting thing, those of you who are in my pods in phase 2, we're setting goals. But I said, before you set a tangible, trackable goal, that's an achievement, I want you to set a becoming goal. So goals of becoming, I remember when I would teach leaders in Mary Kay, and I was teaching a class of leaders that are wanting to move up, obviously, to a stronger leadership position and improve their leadership. And one of the goals was always to earn that pink Cadillac, right? And so I would say to them, I don't want you to shoot for earning the Cadillac. I want you to shoot for becoming a Cadillac director. There's a difference from earning or winning or achieving and checking it off than who you become in the process so you can sustain that growth and then grow even further. Whew. Take that and listen to it again, because it truly will make a difference in those who continue to rise and grow and build whatever it is you want to build. And so it's in that character, and that's the yucky stuff. That's the stuff we don't necessarily want to look at, but we have to be honest with ourselves, face it head on, all the good, bad, and the ugly. And we want to move to a place where we have qualities that will allow our talents and our gifts to be effective. All right. So goals. So here's how I want you to backtrack your goal. So if you have a goal of accomplishing something, let's say it's a goal, it could be in any area of your life. It could be in your health. Let's say you want to lose weight and you want to get fit. Let's say you want to start, you want to get a master's degree of some sort, whatever. So whatever that is, I want you to say, okay, this is the thing that I want to achieve or I want to build. And then you back it out. So you start there and you go, I want to do this by this date, or at least be at this level by this date. All right. So who do you need to become in order to hit that particular benchmark or that goal? Well, what are the habits of somebody who has a master's degree in whatever? Or what are the character traits of somebody who is fit and lean and the size or the type of fitness person that I want to be? What do I think their habits are? What do I think they do? What are some of the character traits that they have that I know I'm going to have to ask myself, do I have those? Oh yeah, I have a couple of those. I could use those. Well, here's a couple that I don't have. And here are a couple of habits that I'm going to have to break and habits I'm going to have to add, take away and add. Anytime you take away a habit, you need to add one. You need to replace it with something so that you aren't falling back into those habits. You've got something, you've replaced it. Another thing with habits is habit stacking, is saying, okay, I have the habit in the morning that I do my quiet time. I get up, I make my coffee, and I have all my stuff set in my quiet time. Well, one of the things that I've been wanting to do is to use that window while the coffee is brewing before I go and sit in my quiet time to do something that is productive, whether it's doing sit-ups and push-ups, whether it's reading my identity statement, whether it's getting dressed for my workout and just putting the clothes on or doing whatever. But that is a perfect way example of habit stacking. So the first thing is, what is that ultimate goal? The next thing is, what are the qualities and the traits that that type of a person has? And then the third part is, what are the habits that will help me to maintain that character? What are the habits that that type of person would have? And then you begin to build on that. Your habits that you establish, the character you start to build, and the boundaries that you put in place are what's going to support you to reach that goal, not just a checklist and some talents and gifts that you have, not a great marketing strategy, and not necessarily great help. All of those things are important. But the thing that's actually going to get you to the goal and keep you there, that's your responsibility besides the delegating and the marketing and all that, is your habits plus character and boundaries to protect them. And so now let's decide, what is it? What's your habit? What are you called to do? So the book Vision Map, the author Joel talks about how he discovered what his mission was. And he was going to law school because that's what everybody said he should do. And he was good at it. He believed them when they said that, but it didn't thrill him. He wasn't really excited about it. One of the things that he loved to do, now you wouldn't think of this as like anything to do with a career. He's getting ready to go to law school, right? But he always loved to go on these adventure trips. He would travel to different places and it would be an adventure. It wouldn't just be like touristy stuff or going to lounge on a beach. He would go to climb these mountains in like Russia or wherever, like these different adventures that put him in nature, that he relied on his own resilience, and all the things, right? And so on one of these thrilling pursuits and adventure travel experiences, God placed a dream in his heart and a vision to start bringing people with him on these trips to help other people create spiritual adventures. He says, I'm convinced that we all have a problem that God has uniquely equipped us to solve. And in his mind, what came to him, what lit him up was what he had learned and experienced on these adventures. He wanted to give to other people. He had experienced such life transforming things while he was on these experiences because he was secluded. He was shut off from the world. He was in nature. He was dependent on God and his focus to get through this adventure. And you learn a lot when you're in those situations. And he wanted to teach other people how to do that and bring them along. And that became his mission. So instead of going to law school, he's just started one step at a time in figuring out what's next. And where's the bow? He maps it out. So if you're someone who says, I think I know what it is. I know what lights me up and I know what I love to do, but I don't know how to monetize it. I don't know if it could really be something that I do for the good of people, but it's something I'm good at and I love it. So that's where you start. Why not? Think outside of the box. Why does everything have to be a regular traditional job? That's this in our day and age, that's not the case. And so this book is called Vision Map, charting a step-by-step course for your biggest hopes and dreams. Now, this is not, again, I'm going to go back to the point where it's not a checklist. And does he have pointers on what he did to head towards this vision he had? Yeah, he does. But it's still not cookie cutter. And he still had some things to learn in the process, some character building exercises. But a lot of it he had done prior. And so that's where some of you may go, you know what, I've done a lot of personal work. And in fact, I haven't just done personal, development, like personal growth stuff that's typical of, reading some books and doing some assessments, but I've done deep dives into some coaching and counseling and some other things that have grown me. Well, then great. This would be perfect for where you're at. But if you're someone who says, yeah, I have this idea and I've tried it and I just keep fumbling, or I don't know what I'm doing wrong, and, or you don't even know where you're at, then doing this process of going back to your identity statement, those of you who've been in the pod, you've developed your identity statement. I want you to go back to it. And I want you to read it in a different way. I want you to read it as if it is telling you what to do. And I want you to read it in a way where you could start to look at it and say, I don't know how I would make this a career or a living or whatever, but what if I did this for this group of people, or I could do this in my community? Read it in that way. Then I want you to look at activities that light you up. What are some things that you do that just, maybe you horseback ride, maybe you are, you run or you ride or you whatever it is. Message me. Tell me your identity statement and what it is that lights you up. And I bet you we could brainstorm and start thinking. And I bet you if you prayed on it and journaled it and all of that, that it would come to you. And I bet you some of you know it, but you're too afraid to step out. And maybe you're so far deep in your shadow mission that you think that there really isn't anything for you to do. Think about that. So that's our goal setting session. A lot of different things to think about, but I look forward to hearing from you so that maybe I could just come alongside you and guide you in the direction of the right path for you. Thanks for watching.